Hey, it's Pete with GCI Turf. Hope you're doing good. You know, we're always talking about having a nice turf and what to do and when to do and why to do. But you know what? We never talk about our trees. So I got one trick I'm gonna show you today that'll make a world of difference in your tree and shrub. So here I am with one of my favorite trees in the world. This is a Natchez Crepe Myrtle. Now a lot of folks get these confused if they're bushes or tree or whatever. Well, the Natchez variety, it's a tree. No different than that maple tree. And I know you've seen these folks come in here with chainsaws and they just butcher them and murder them and hack them all up right there. This is what I'm talking about. And this. And this. Totally and completely destroying the integrity of this tree. So I like to leave mine the natural way, the way they're supposed to look. So you can see here, this is a big, nice, full one, and it's still got plenty of room to grow. So many folks plant these things way too close to their house, and then they end up having to cut them because they're intruding into their house. Well, I've got a good 18 to 20 foot here between the house and this tree, and that way I can give it room, let it grow out and fill out. So just be sure not to plant this thing in the wrong place because it's going to get big. A common problem with crepe myrtles is aphids. Well, right now, if your crepe myrtle doesn't have leaves on it, you can't physically or visually see the aphids. So one way you can tell is by looking at the trunk, the bark, the limbs. And if it's got this black, sooty looking color, almost looks like you sprayed it with a can of spray paint, you've had aphids. So what happens here is during the year when your crepe myrtles have leaves on them, these aphids will attach to the backside, sucking the sap out. Aphid's a sucking type insect. So it's gonna suck the sap out of the tree. Well, it's gonna secrete what's called a honeydew. And it's gonna drop that honeydew on everything around it, including all the bark and the branches of the tree, and then the sooty mold grows on the honeydew. So right now, if you currently have sooty mold on your crepe myrtle, if it's black, the best thing to do is get some warm soapy water in a dish rag and wash it off. So what I want to do is protect my crepe myrtle moving forward. And I've been doing this for several years with, I haven't actually used the Green County products, but I have been using the Humic and Kelps and Fulvic on all my trees and plants. That's why they look so good and so healthy. But I've got a simple little solution here that anybody in the world can do. You don't need a high dollar sprayer. You don't need a special lawn care equipment or nothing. We're gonna do it using a 5-gallon bucket. So first thing I need to do is I've got a good thick layer of mulch here. You wanna rake that back and get down to the bare dirt. So why do I rake the mulch back? Well, this is a soil drench application. What I mean is we're going to apply the solution directly to the soil, soak it in good. That way it can get down in the root system. The plant can take it up and disperse it throughout the plant. Now this part's optional. You can either do this or not do it. I've got a soil probe. It's got like a real sharp tip on it. We use these quite often in yards, checking for compaction and that kind of thing. But basically, all I'm gonna do is go around, put me a bunch of holes in the ground. It's almost kind of like aeration in a way. Now, if you don't have that and you want to do something similar, just take an old drill. It's completely fine. Make sure you use an old bit. You don't want to dull up your bit. So I know you're screaming at the camera saying you took a drill bit and drilled in the root system of the tree. You're crazy, dude. Well, no, I didn't actually. When you're drilling, you'll know when you hit a root, especially if it's a major root of the tree, and stop drilling. It's kind of that easy. Okay, so I got some pretty cool tree anatomy 101. Now, inside this crepe myrtle, there's what's called a vascular bundle, and that's pretty much true for all plants. And inside that vascular bundle, there's a highway of veins and arteries that distribute water, nutrients, whatever, through the tree or through the plant. Well, the phloem sends things up and down. The xylem sends things up the tree. Now, why is that important with a root drench or a soil drench application? If we make our application to the soil and the roots take it up, it spreads it out throughout the entire tree. All right, so what am I going to use? Well, I think I'm going to go with Imidacloprid. It's pretty good for a systemic application, which this stuff translocates throughout the entire tree pretty well. What it does, it gets in the xylem and travels up through the tree. And once it is throughout the entire tree and gets out into the leaves and everything, the aphid bites it and takes in the imidacloprid. Takes out his nervous system, more or less. Well, how much do I use? Well, let's read the label, because we all know how important reading the label is. We just don't go out there and throw stuff on the yard or on trees without knowing how much to actually put down to get the maximum benefit of it. All right, so here we are. We're looking at soil injection and soil drench applications. You can see here we got trees. Use the following rates as a function of tree diameter at breast height. DBH, well, the diameter breast height. Now, what does that mean? Let me go show you. Now, I'm gonna show you a real simple way to get this diameter breast height. Take you a tape measure, and from the ground up, measure 4.5 feet. Mark that spot on the tree, and that's where we're gonna get our circumference of the tree. Now, let's say you have a smaller tree, and you're 4.5 foot up here somewhere. Well, that's easy. Just measure right below the bottom tree limb. Now, here's another example. Take this one out of the picture. I don't have a tree that comes up and forks into two, but I'm gonna use this right here as an example. So what you do is this comes up and forks, and of course your 4.5 foot is gonna be way up here somewhere. Well, the easiest way to do that is come right below the fork here and take your measurement right around here. I had to stop video and then come back a little later because, man, the guy's weed eater was driving me crazy. I couldn't hear what I was saying. So I'm talking about a crepe myrtle in specifically here, but this diameter breast height, it applies to any tree on the face of the planet. It's just the way you measure and get the diameter. Now, first we need to get the circumference before we can find out the diameter. Now, since this notch-ass crepe myrtle comes up and forks out, there's a little bit different way you want to measure this. Of course, I'm gonna start, we can get my 4.5 feet, my breast height, which is somewhere right around in here. Now you can see I've got 3 pretty good sized branches, or pretty good sized trunks coming off this tree right here. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna pick one that's the biggest, and I'm gonna say this is pretty much the biggest, and I'm gonna measure that one fully. Then I'm gonna measure these two separate from the bigger one. All right, I'm only gonna record half the circumference of the two smaller ones. Now, if you've got 10 individual trunks coming up, you still measure the biggest one and then take half of the measurement of the other ones, and we're going to add it all up. We're going to measure the biggest one right here, take that and add it to half the circumference of everything else at that 4.5 foot height. Well, how am I going to get my circumference? Well, that's easy. You can take a shoestring, you can take a piece of rope. I got a little piece of electric dog fence wire right here. Well, that's simple. I'm just going to take my dog wire here and wrap it around, get it good and tight so I get an accurate measurement. Hold that mark with my finger. Look at there. I'm at 12 inches. Okay, so with a multi-trunk tree like a crepe myrtle, we don't want this to be too hard because it's not. You go 4.5 foot up from the bottom of the tree. You measure the circumference of the biggest one. It's that simple. And in my case, that was 12 inches. Then I measure the other two, which were 10 inches, but we're only going to use half the circumference for the smaller two. So that brings me to 12, 5, and 5. Half of 10 is 5, any way you cut it, right? So when we add these up, we get 22 inches. Then you divide it by pi. No. I'm not talking about this kind of pi. I'm talking about the math you learned in school. And when you divide 22 by pi, you get 7. This is the diameter or the measurement we will work with. So now that we have correctly measured the diameter of this crepe myrtle I got out here, we now know we're going to work off that 7. So right here you got a low rate, which is 0.1 ounce, or 0.4 ounce is the high rate. Now since that's a pretty good sized tree, I'm going to go with the 0.4 ounce. All right, so I know I said we was going to use a 5-gallon bucket, but all my 5-gallon buckets are full of stuff. So I'm going to use a good old, what do you call these things, a watering can or whatever. Most folks have got one of these. This is a 2-gallon. And you don't have to be a 2-gallon. You can use a 1-gallon if you want. I'm going to put about half the water in it. Then when you do my math with the Imidacloprid, that comes out to about 2.8 ounces, and this is pretty much that. And you remember I like my agitation stick here, so I'm going to mix it a little bit as I'm pouring it. All right, so while I'm at it, I want to add some nutrients to this tree as well, and I want to help you get your dirt right. So here's what we're going to do. This is the tree and shrub pack. I'll link it down below where you can pick one up. And it's Green, Microgreen, the Humic 12, and RGS. Now the Green comes in at a 1/2 ounce per inch of diameter, so that's about 3.5 ounces. Now, something else I'm going to throw in here is the Microgreen. Of course, it's got a little bit of nitrogen in it too, and it's all your micronutrients and things like that. Now the microgreen is kind of tricky on the label. It says 4 to 8 ounces per 1,000 square feet. Well, we're not really measuring thousands of square feet when we're measuring tree diameter. So I'm just going to run the 8 ounce rate just because it's a bigger tree. Since you're working on getting your dirt right in the process, you know that, trees will do better. Plants, shrubs, trees, they're going to do better when your soil is in a more healthy state. So we're going to do that by using some Humic 12 and RGS, and I'm going to run about 6 ounces each of those. Me personally, I don't ever recommend you run over 6 ounces per 1,000 of the Humic and the RGS, and here's why. It's a pretty good reason if you think about it. The ground's been bad for a while. Well, it's going to take a little while to make it better. Things don't happen overnight when we're talking about dirt. So if you think by adding more is better, well, you're wrong, because it doesn't work that way. See, I've been applying biostimulants to our turf grass here locally for about 10 years now. I know how long it takes for them to work. Changing soil structure and making soil healthier and better takes a little time. It's more like the long distance runner who's training for that long haul and that long run. And hey, if you're the sprinter in this whole deal, then you keep sprinting. You keep wasting your money. And as far as your micros go, all that kind of thing, the plant can only take in so much at one time, right? Something else I want to bring to your attention is I'm getting a lot of questions about, will these RGS and Humic products stain your driveway? Well, yeah, they will. So be very careful. Don't get it on your driveway. Don't spray it all over the side of your house and that kind of thing. But if you do, stop what you're doing, get your hose pipe, rinse it off. The other question was, once I spray my grass, how long should I wait before I get on my yard? We just let it dry real good. That's all. Once I finish filling up my little watering can with water, I'm ready to go apply. All right, so once you have your dirt rake, your mulch rake back, you got dirt exposed, you got a bunch of little perforated holes in the ground to help this product get down to the root system much faster than it would otherwise. We've got our solution mix. There you go. Now, one little trick is when you rake your mulch back, if you'll leave it piled up around the edge and kind of create a barrier, so that in case you start getting a little bit of runoff, that mulch will keep it and let it seep in the ground. All right, now once I apply my product, I'm gonna just take me 2 gallons of clean, fresh water and just kind of go back over this and kind of help work it in the ground. Of course, your last step, you just want to put your mulch or your pine needles back in place. There you go. So hey, if you were strolling around YouTube today trying to figure out what that black crap is on your trees, well, now you know. You also found out that when you do a soil drench application, that tree root is going to take that product up and distribute it throughout the entire tree, protecting that tree from aphids. By the way, I cut the yard yesterday, and I'm going to tell you what, I'm really liking that right mower. Now, hey, the way you show me that you like this stuff is hit that little subscribe button below the video. Hit your notification bell, so that way every time I post a video, you'll be the first to know about it. Now, we've also got a new Facebook group, and it's open to anybody that wants to join. It's #GetYourDirtRight. Now, in this Facebook group, I'm also going to be posting more videos, more tutorials, more how to do this and how to do that. All you've got to do is send a request to join that group, and we'll let you in the door. I appreciate you watching. Hey, get your dirt right.